Avengers Endgame being Avengers Endgame with at least 40 main characters and 3 or maybe 4 stories to round off, it's no surprise that there were people out there annoyed about the direction some of the characters' stories went in. One in particular who probably springs to mind is Thor, who got fat and was depressed and mostly used for comic relief. It was weird. I like the overall message about depression that came with it, but it was still weird. And then there was Hulk, who I personally really liked, but I know there was some people who didn't, which, I mean, I guess you're entitled to your opinion, but if that opinion means you're going to try and stop Disney from fully buying the rights to Hulk and making a Professor Hulk trilogy, no one should stand in the way of that. But the one I want to focus on today is Captain Marvel, someone who has had a lot of people talking about her role even before the film came out, which was no surprise with her solo film coming out a mere 49 days before Avengers Endgame, showing her off to be one of the most powerful Avengers yet, causing some people to start worrying that she was going to be too powerful and go on to play an all too important role when it came to defeating Thanos, which I think at the time was a reasonable fear to have. Like, it was much more satisfying seeing the 3 main heroes battling out with Thanos, since they're the ones who started it all and this was the end for 2 of them at least, you know, rather than have this newcomer who literally hadn't been mentioned in the MCU until a year before this film came out just come and swoop in and save the day, only for the film to come out relieving us of our fears as Captain Marvel was utilized perfectly. Or so I thought. Because no, apparently everyone's now complaining that she was underused. Like, I thought we were worried the opposite was going to happen, and now we're complaining. I know how everyone's going to be like, well, yeah, on the scale of being overused to underused, there's a middle ground. But the thing is, she is in the middle ground. Like, perfectly in the middle. Bang in the middle. I've edited this so that little triangle is at exactly 0 on the x-axis, which is as in the middle as it gets. I thought this was obvious, but apparently there's a debate to be had about it, so let me explain why I think this, starting with what it would have meant to overuse her. Her coming in at the start was 100% necessary. She had no connection to the Avengers, and Fury's pager being at the headquarters causing her to show up there ties in nicely, even if that didn't actually happen in the film. She'd have obviously witnessed the effects of Thanos' snap wherever she'd been when it happened, and therefore it makes sense for her to want to join a mission to kill him. Overusing her would have been making her the focus of this mission, which they didn't. She plays a part in taking him down, but one of many people doing it. She doesn't say much to him, and most importantly, she isn't the one who kills him, which makes sense. She's the only one of these characters who hasn't had an encounter with Thanos before. Then, when it flashes forward 5 years later and Scott Lang breaks out the quantum realm, if she had come along, been a part of the time heist, present for the reverse snap, and there from the start of the battle, that would have been severely overusing her. Because being a new character only featuring in 1 film before this one, I just don't think she had enough reason for it to make sense for her to be there. She already had a bigger part than the other characters in a similar position to her going into this film, being Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange, you know, the ones with a sequel coming soon. I just think giving her a part that big for her first ever team-up movie would take being thrown into the deep end to a whole nother level. Like, that'd be throwing her into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Especially when you take a moment and realize all of the other characters involved in the time heist have been involved in at least 3 other movies and were either one of the original Avengers, someone who had information on where one of the stones was being kept that the original Avengers wouldn't have known, or were Ant-Man. And he had the idea to build the time machine, so I don't think anyone was arguing about him being there, other than maybe Rocket.
It's like a little puppy, all happy and everything. Do you want to go to space?
Point is, they were all necessary for the mission to be completed, and none of them felt out of place being there. Captain Marvel would have. In the same way Okoye would have been out of place on the time heist. Like, could you imagine her poking the Ancient One with a spear, trying to get the time stone, arguing over who has a better hairdo? What? Sorry, I didn't say that. And therefore, excluding her from the time heist meant they didn't overuse her. Not that anyone thought they did. Which brings us to what underusing her would have been. You see, to underuse her, I think her last appearance in the film would have had to have been right here when she leaves that call that they were having for some reason. Was that like a monthly thing? If she hadn't come back for the final fight and the Avengers took on Thanos without her, that would have been underusing her, regardless of what happened at the start. But of course, that's not what happens, because at the end, she does help the Avengers fight Thanos, which puts her usage in the middle. Perfect. And I know the complaint is she was underused because she doesn't come into this fight until the last minute, but that argument's just completely flawed. It would have made no sense for her to come when everyone else did. Firstly, she didn't blip out, so it would have been confusing if she came through one of Doctor Strange's yellow sparkly things. Like, I know he saw 14 million futures and therefore must have known she came and fought, but it still wouldn't make sense. Like, plot convenience just kind of forced her there. And I mean, also, she can fly through space, so she doesn't really need to come through one of them. And like, it isn't as if it didn't make sense for her to come to Earth. I'm pretty sure she'd have realized the reverse snap happened on whatever planet she was on, because people would have just suddenly started appearing. And she'd know Earth was probably the cause of it, so therefore she comes to Earth. Which gave the writers the opportunity to bring her into the fight the moment it started turning away from the heroes. And I'm sorry, but this is good storytelling. You can tell they were trying to replicate the Thor in Wakanda scene, which I don't remember anyone complaining about Thor being underused in the Battle of Wakanda, but yeah, tell me they're completely different because that doesn't fit your agenda. I mean, why would anyone complain about it? It's arguably the best scene in the entire film, fully showing off the power of Thor and Stormbreaker, and while this scene obviously doesn't live up to that, you can notice similarities with what they're trying to pull off, this time demonstrating the power of Captain Marvel, which ties into another fear people had before the film, being that she might be a little overpowered compared to everyone else. In her own movie, we'd seen her literally destroy an alien spaceship from flying through it. Wouldn't she just be able to kill Thanos like he wasn't even there? Like, I would have put money on them having to reduce her power set so she couldn't just defeat Thanos on her own, but fortunately, I was wrong. I'll pay out, Marvel. How much do you want? 5? I've got that and a used Toy Story 4 cinema ticket. So, yeah, that's all I've got. Please sponsor me on Patreon. But they once again found the perfect middle ground by demonstrating her insane power by flying through an alien spaceship again, which proved to be a huge turning point in the fight, crucial to their victory, but they still showed she wasn't unstoppable. Specifically when it came to hand-to-hand combat, with Thanos taking her out twice, once with the Infinity Gauntlet and once without. This weakness was shown to us in her solo story, so goes together with what we already know, and therefore wasn't just reducing her power set so Iron Man could defeat Thanos in the end. Once again, reaching that middle ground, it's the perfect balancing act. Perfectly balanced as all things should be. How have I gone this far in the video without making a reference to that? I guess in conclusion, I really like Captain Marvel's part in Endgame. I think she's used a good amount in a loyal way to the character introduced in Captain Marvel. Further developing her not a people person character, continuing to want to work alone, helping people all over the universe rather than just in Earth. Plus that slight tint of arrogance people love to complain about because, you know, arrogant heroes are the worst, right? I don't know how no one's picked up on this yet, but she's literally the female Mr. Incredible. And at the end of it all, I guess my only complaint is how on Earth didn't she age a day in 30 years? Like, this is her in the 90s, this is her in 2023. Like, I get that the theory of relativity might mean it hasn't been 30 years for her, but like, I'm not buying it. And that's all I've got for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. You can subscribe to my channel by clicking here. You can watch another video by clicking here. You can check out my Patreon here and in the description down below. It would mean a lot if you could support me on there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. That's a lovely strand of hair, just